I'm gonna have to reduce my own background noise and then boil in the South Carolina or Florida heat. That's gonna be great.
I already hit live.
Okay.
I'm sorry that that's in there. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's another Wednesday. It's another episode of the Mattriarchy. I am, as usual, your host, Matt Reese, coming to you from unseasonably cool Scottsbluff, Nebraska. Last
Lucky.
week, I'm not even kidding, was a scorcher. Yeah, I felt like summer was full on. And then Saturday, man, it was perfect amount of not too hot, not too cold, great summer day. And then it's been today though, man, it has been cold. Rainy all day, spitting gray skies. It's some weird, man.
Well, rub
Anyway.
it in for poor Twitless. Why don't you?
Well, there you have it. Unseasonable though. Usually our Julys are real thermidor levels of temperature there.
So basically, you're too cold, he's too hot, and I'm
just about right. Yeah, I don't mind it. It was unseasonably cold, but I have jackets. I'm still in shorts. So, hey, so today we did not come to talk about the weather. However, our usual compatriot, the metal, was having some sort of computer issue, and he was on, and it sounded like he was in the middle. I was explaining it to Cartoonicus, who arrived just after the metal left. I don't know if he's restarting his machine or what the story is. But I said it sounded like the metal was in the middle of a wind farm. And Cartoonicus says, I didn't know they farmed wind. And I said, well, a wind farm is just, they call a bunch of windmills that are there to harvest the electricity out of them, right? Which was, of course, was disappointing to Cartoonicus. He imagined, I don't know how that would work on there, but it reminded me of a fun story from back in the day that I will use to kill a little bit of time, hoping that the metal can join us again. And that story is that I used to deliver newspapers a number of years ago around here in Nebraska, and there was a letter to the editor. Hey, metal.
Hello, is it fixed now?
Yes.
Okay. I think I found the problem.
Thank the Lord.
No. So I was messing with all the stuff on my end, and the reason it wasn't coming in is because StreamYard switched my microphone on me. So I'm like messing with all the other stuff on my end, and I didn't even realize what the actual problem was. And it was picking up my mic from my camcorder. Which is like on the other side of the room.
That explains it perfectly. Yeah. So, back to my wind story. I got to quick. When I was delivering newspapers, sometimes I'd flip through them as I was folding them in the mornings. And there was a letter to the editor from a fellow down in Kimball, which is a town about 45 minutes south of Scottsbluff here, who was writing a letter of complaint to the editor that ever since they installed the wind farm down in Kimball, the wind has been terrible. Which, of course, is why they put the wind farm there to begin with.
Right.
The fella just hadn't noticed how windy Kimball was because he didn't see the big windmills spinning. It's just part of life.
It's like when you get a red car and then every car is red.
Yeah, exactly. If you buy a border collie, everyone owns a border collie. But, of course, it's like cattle and sheep country around here, so there's a lot of border collies anyway. So we have in the chat, I don't know if everyone is still here, but we have DeCronk, who I don't believe I've seen you before, and Colin Lamping, who I recognize your name, I believe, from Twitter, but I'm not sure if you've ever stopped by our little show before. But today, we are talking about Dawn of DC Superman issue number 2, which Twitless convinced us to read. Well, most of us. Oh, have you before? Well, thank you for showing up again. And sorry, my memory sucks. Anyway, Twitless's idea was let's talk about something coming out, and I think this is pretty good, and I've been reading it, I'm enjoying it, and we're several months behind. So if we slip into spoiler territory, you could have bought this months ago. That's on
I
you.
remember now. Yeah, I remember seeing Colin in that chat. It was this when we did the single
Oh.
panel thing? Yeah.
About single panel
Yeah.
comics. All right. There you go. I'm not sure I was here for that show. Was that one of the ones
You
when
weren't.
I was?
It was one of the ones that me and Twitless hosted. So
Yeah. I was finishing up school.
Yay!
Yeah.
I'm in summer school.
What? On to summer school? Oh.
I'm in summer school. Yeah.
Oh, you are right now?
as a student or a teacher?
Well, I like to say they teach me.
Well, you know what they say about good teachers learn just as much as from their students as they teach.
Good night, kids. That's a show.
Yeah.
I can't carry on after that.
We're actually we're doing Understanding Comics by McLeod this week. So.
Oh,
that's a fun summer subject.
Yep.
Yeah, we have gone rounds about that book here on the old show.
Yes, we have.
Although I have to say, all of my problems with the book, like off thing, we have, we're specifically discussing that issue number 2. We'll talk about how that fits in Superman as a whole. Colin is asking, but on the subject of McLeod, I have come very hard against McLeod for some of his attempts at getting into the epistemology and stuff like that I take issue with. But Twitless says you're not going to find a better textbook that's also a comic that talks about comics. And oh my gosh,
Ain't that the truth?
I can't even argue with that. That's so from a teaching perspective, it happens to be a flawless book. So yeah. I'm spotting the Kyrie on my shelf. Yes, indeed. I am anxiously anticipating issue 3, like chewing on my nails with anticipation.
It's pretty good.
Oh man, I was just talking to Matt on Monday about various things, and we were going on about what we're expecting to get, and it makes me anxious and sad all at the same time. So, okay, so on with the show, talking about Superman. Now, when we last talked about Superman, issue number 1, yeah. Anyway, when we were just talking about issue 1, it left with a cliffhanger that I can't remember if we discussed at the end of that show. But I think we have to spoil the ending of 1 to talk about issue 2. Is that fair? Are we on board with that?
I think we did discuss the cliffhanger. Yeah, we just didn't go into the next issue.
Yeah, we didn't talk about what the cliffhanger was too much. I will say though, so Superman at the end of the last issue, he rounds a corner or something like that, and he runs into a herd of parasites. Okay.
Yep.
So you guys all know the parasite out there in internet land, right? Big purple guy, steals your soul, cousin of Grimace, right? So that's the steals your energy,
perfect
not your
topic
soul.
too.
What?
The parasite milkshake going
around.
The
parasite milkshake is very hip these days.
That would explain the memes a lot more than it being a Grimace milkshake.
This whole cover oozes 90s.
You are correct.
A little.
Well, it also has that
almost has Venom vibes to it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the hero at the disadvantage of a mysterious assailant.
Right.
The one question I've got about this cover, I want to address real quick. It was one of those covers where they have that it doesn't take place in the book, right? Right. It's misleading about what actually is going on there. And on the topic of that, what do you guys think about covers like that? Do you find them annoying? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Where does it fit with all that?
Mixed feelings.
Yeah, I agree with the mixed feeling. I think I used to hate it much more than I do now. I think back in the day, I was like, "How dare you? This is false advertising. How could you do this to me?"
Comic clickbait.
Right. The older me, because now that I'm actually making them myself, and now I'm tempted to make covers like this, I'm starting to see why you'd be like, oh, this is like it's like an album cover, It's not
Yeah.
necessarily meant to be entirely indicative of what you're getting. It's meant to entice you and also tie in maybe to do something metaphorical, like and I'll give an example, right? When Superman first meets this character, he doesn't know if she's a friend or foe. So from the character's perspective, she could be a threat. And she does end up like, kind of being antagonistic for a moment. So if you take the front cover as sort of like a mental sort of moment that a character might be going through, processing something mentally, I think I'm much more permissive there. So like I said, I'm mixed. I do still feel like sometimes you go, and I think the times where I'm most critical of it is when I see something on a cover that I want to see happen in the book and it
just
doesn't.
doesn't. Yeah.
So if it's a fight between two characters and the cover shows them going at it, and I go, ooh, I really want that, and then the book just doesn't do it, I think that's when I feel like it's a problem.
Yeah. Like, I'm fine if the cover shows, like, say, a portion of a fight that never gets shown in the book, because that's almost like getting a bonus scene right there. It's this big pinup. Like, maybe you have the Human Torch fighting Godzilla or something like that, right? And he's flying through Central Park to ram into Godzilla for the cover, but that never happens in the book. But you do still get the Human Torch and Godzilla fight. I'm like, I'm okay with that, right? That's a cool scene. But when you have like a cover that betrays like maybe the theme of the book altogether, or does have like a spot where you just never see anything akin to what happens on the cover, and it's cool, it's like,
So
feel
it's the
betrayed.
same old clickbait issue that we've always had, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I only like if it's something that is okay. So like if you've got a comic book of like your main hero looking awesome, right? I'm down with that. If you've got a comic book where your hero and your villain are clearly fighting, I'm down with that. Even if it's not exactly how it shakes down, unless it's like totally on. Okay, so
as long as
Spider-Man,
it fits the theme of what you're doing.
if Spider-Man and Doctor Doom are like on top of a trolley racing down through like San Francisco for some reason, and the story inside takes place like in New York, and Doctor Doom doesn't show up until the last issue, I'll be pretty annoyed, right? Or the last page. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Right. If he only shows up, he's barely there, and you're like, oh, they're not in San Francisco. There's no trolley chase involved.
So I'll tell you what I first, and again, I'm wondering if this was intentional. I think Metal, I think we'll get this reference. Did you see this and think Resident Evil Village?
Yeah. With Lady Demiska Crew, I think is how you pronounce her name. But
yeah. Like,
Lady
and
D.
it's funny because like the interior, like the character here is nothing like that at all. But if you just like glance at this cover and then just like don't look too deeply, that was my initial take. I was like, oh look, it's the big vampire lady from Resident Evil. And they were definitely going, I think, for that angle on the cover a bit. So the cover is definitely not consistent exactly with what the book is doing, but the character,
it's a little misleading.
It's a bit,
just a little.
Yeah. Well, and like for example, the big darkness over. I mean, she does have a giant hat, and like I didn't look at the cover close enough to gauge like what was going on. I was like, okay, so Superman's in peril, mysterious lady in dark. It's got this Maryland moonlight on the bottom, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's plenty. Let's move on to the inside, because I knew I was going to read the book anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Even as a character, which we will get to it, but even as a character, I'm kind of mixed on. But they really haven't given us enough for me to form an opinion on the character yet either. So
I think this feels to me. She feels to me like Williamson's like, this is who I'm adding to the because every creator wants to add.
This is what I'll get my royalties on later.
Right.
Hopefully, everyone's wanting the Bane. That's the absolute facts of it, right?
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's
and I gotta say, like honestly, and here's part of it on that subject. like I'm kind of down with that as long as it's something that seems to kind of work, right? Because
As long as it's
like,
cool.
well, it depends. Like, as long as it's cool, you definitely. One of the things that we have is that the DC universe is, and Marvel too, they're so stagnant with people that are afraid to try anything new. And man, I want some new blood. I want to be able to retire some of these heroes, right? I mean, that's my thing on it, right? Is like,
Yeah.
let's push some of these rather than let people like, oh, we got to keep so and so relevant because whatever. No, man, let's build up a new fan base around a new character and make them awesome as heck and share that love with new creators, you know, and that kind of thing. So I definitely see like there's a certain mercenariness to that attitude on behalf of a creator because you know they can look at having that cash, but at the same time it's like I think the universe would benefit from an infusion of more new stuff.
Well,
So-
if you could see too, like she's already got her own little logo. And it's like, hey, look,
Yeah,
you like
I know,
it?
right?
She could have her own book.
You know-
Yeah, TM. I will say that I'm less. Colin has a funny quote. Oh yes, time to add my original character to a pre-established book. So I'm a little less. Actually, I'll put it this way. I think that because I think the two villains we get introduced to here, I think those are also new guys.
Mhm.
And I'm much more interested in them. I think they're much.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of new blood, I like them a lot more.
They also
than,
really
than,
haven't
than Marilyn.
give us anything to be interested for Marilyn yet either. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
And we got to. I mean, like we got to get to those guys a little bit because man,
Yeah,
I got some issues.
That's fair. That's fair. I still like them. I don't know.
Like there may be some solid gold like long term, but man, anyway, let's move on a little. Let's move
All
on
right,
a
that's
little.
fine.
So,
wait, you don't like Weird Al Scientist?
oh my god, I wanted to hold off on it till we got to it, but no.
Okay. That's
So this stream of Fizz is about the second issue of the Dawn of DC new Superman series. So that's what we're going in a deep dive talking about a little. And I first of all, before we get talking about this part, of course, because I kind of meant to bring it up sooner, we got sidetracked on talking about covers. But the Parasite, the hordes of Parasite, right? What's this stream about? This is what's the stream about. Colin says this guy from another planet who landed on Earth is 100 power from the sun's radiation.
he's not wrong.
Oh man, it's killing me.
This is
It's
a
killing
perfect
me.
answer though, because you get kind of annoyed when you're running a stream and somebody comes in like 15 to 20 minutes late while you're already doing something. Like, hey, what's this about? It's like, I don't know. You probably listen and gather that information on your own.
This is the current Superman run. Josh Williamson, I guess.
Or actually, I need to clarify. This is a current Superman
A
run because
current
there's
Superman run.
there's
There you go.
currently
There's a
like
lot.
3. And I will mention, I won't do a lot of it, but I will mention a couple of times the current Action Comics run, which I think runs parallel to this, because I don't know if it's as applicable here, but there are, because I'm reading them both. It is kind of interesting because I can see what each comic is doing well and which one and what they're not doing so well. I personally think Dawn of DC Superman is doing things way better overall than what's currently going on in Action Comics.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Fizz, yes, John still exists. He's a super background supporting character who has like 4 lines in this book.
And that's
This
why
is the one he shows up in, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
we
yeah.
might not even talk about it because it's so inconsequential to the plot.
No, actually, I do want to bring it up because of how
Okay.
much it's lampshaded.
Okay, we'll get that.
Okay, all right, yeah. It deserves mention.
fair, but it's like 20. It's like in 15 pages. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right now. Okay, so
Good point.
we have the Parasite, who, as you guys all know, was a big purple dude who would suck the energy out of everything, and he craved Superman's boundless powers because of blah 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 blah. Right, it's a mutant freak. In this one, he's evolved, and instead of just getting bigger and huger and more monstrous, he's multiplying and splitting into a bunch of other little gremlin-sized and normal human-sized parasites who are going all damn it, Fizz, you're screwing me up. Who are going rampaging through Metropolis, and oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And so Superman has been overwhelmed in between issue 1 and issue 2, and he has to escape to save his life, and that's happening in like the next page on here.
I do want to point out that again, the one strong point in the book, and that I do like, and it's definitely leaning into the whole like cinematic aspect of things, which I'm not always the biggest fan of in comics. But if we are going to do the cinematic, if that is something we're going to do, they are doing it really well here. This spread is a very cinematic one. I like the use of color. The sort of like the red like just creates this instant sense of urgency, dread, and horror. Actually, this is the issue that kind of channels the horror a little, just a teeny bit.
Well, another thing I like too, right, is that we don't see something like those awful blur tools. Instead of doing that, we just like get rid of the lines and let the painting kind of do the depth of field.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let
good point. Yeah.
Let those phased flat colors give us that impression of distance.
Yeah, but this is a good opening spread. It's a good opening moment to the book. And so, like I said, if you're gonna do cinematic, I like this. And it's not too dark. It's not too horrifying. But it sets a good tone for the horror here of having Metropolis overrun by parasites, which is a pretty actually terrifying idea.
Yeah, well, one thing is, why doesn't Parasite make a plan? Parasite's never been a planner. He's just been this rampaging monster. So I think the idea of the power
always
multiplier.
disliked Parasite.
Yeah.
And I actually liked him in this. This is like one of the only times I really liked Parasite, because half the time there's some cool stories with Parasite, but half the time he's basically a cop out. It's like, oh, let's have a rampaging monster that makes it to where our superhero can't use their powers because they don't have it anymore. It's like, well, that's kind of lame.
Well, and also because like Rudy Jones or whatever his name is, can't remember right now. Anyway, he's not a bad guy. I mean, he was a criminal who allowed the experiment to be done to him, but he's not as bad as he has to be, right? I mean, he's really become this full-on monster. He's got this Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing, where you've got a morally questionable dude who then becomes a victim to his own, baser desires. So, that it's one of those things where Superman wouldn't want to. The damage that the parasite does is not in proportion to the darkness of the man's spirit, and which is at least a metaphor for the nature of human evil, but blah blah blah, right?
Fizz brings up an interesting point. He says Silver Age Parasite is more of a planner, and that's something. And we do sometimes see that with characters where they get the one that I remember more is Killer Croc.
Killer Croc. I was just going to say that.
He gets flanderized more as they go.
In his King Croc days, he was very much of a mastermind. Yeah.
So, one problem with writing a character like that is when you reduce them to the point where they're just a mindless beast, then you've basically created your own writing problem. It's like, oh, Parasite's a mindless beast, and it's like, well, you have reduced him to that at this point. So what's interesting here that I want to point out is the fact, and this is something that Williamson is doing throughout the run. And it's another thing I tend to appreciate is he's taking some of these tropes that we've come to accept, whether or not they've been reduced or otherwise, and he is finding little spins on them. And what I like about that is that the character is still maintaining a good chunk or percentage of what is recognizable, but he is putting enough of a spin to be like, well, that's something new. I didn't quite wouldn't have expected that, but it's not just like it's not quite how do I put it? It is subversion without inversion. Subversion is like you weren't expecting that, but we're used to subversion being a complete role reversal, which is you wanted your hero to be strong, haha, I've made him pathetic.
It's
like, thanks, so
constructive subversion instead of destructive subversion.
Sure, yeah. So Williamson and Campbell are doing that, and I'm like, oh, that's neat. And so every time he introduces somebody that you're familiar with, part of the fun is being like, and what twist did he put on you this time? And so that's kind of what he's doing in this run, and I kind of like it.
Fizz has brought up that this is something that you guys are going to mock me, but apparently I have not read enough Silver Age Superman because I did not recall this thing about Parasite. So most of my experience with Parasite, now that I'm thinking about it, has been in comics post Crisis. So apparently, need to dig through. I've got some back issues of Superman I haven't gotten to yet, but apparently I need to dig in and experience some classic Parasite. But that's going to have to wait because now we're talking about zombie Parasite, and who's very much in the fast zombie mentality. These guys are rampaging through town, and it's quite the thing. And so Superman actually finds himself on the ropes. And here, this is right after this Flash. I gotta say, Superman's on the ropes, and then we change scenes. Now, in the last issue, it ended. Here's the very end of it, but there was this big mystery about who the real villains are. They're Lex Luthor's nemesis. His chickens are coming home to roost, and so Lex has been talking to Superman to try to get him to help Lex out because only the two of them together can defeat Lex's secret rogues gallery. Now that seems like an intriguing concept until this page. And here's the problem with this page, right? It's like the 5th page of the 2nd issue of this story arc, and already we have faces for the mysterious real villains. And I'm like,
Could have built up more tension.
You got it, and then the faces he picks for them, like of the 6 characters on the screen, 4 of them are jokes. So it's just like
I think so. Part of this is Campbell's art, which is like Stefan Sebjiks or whatever, and so some of that it's an acquired taste a bit, and so I just had to kind of like okay, his character, these characters are going to look a little more on the cartoon side, at least for Mr. Graft right here. I think it's Dr. Farm. It looks pretty still like out of a horror show, and I don't know. I'm a little on the fence on them. They're definitely they're unique. These are not characters I would expect to see in Superman, and so that has me. I haven't made up my mind yet. But I'm open to it. I guess is what I'm saying. It's not what I usually expect, but I'm like, okay, all right, Superman team. I'm willing to give you some rope here. You've earned some goodwill with a lot of some of the other things you're doing. I'm not entirely sold on these two being our major villains, but I'm open to letting you see if you can convince me.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed. I think I could have handled Weird Al in the wheelchair as the villain.
Yeah.
If we'd had a little more build up and seen these guys do some dastardly deeds before we get to there.
It almost seems like a after-school club more than a villain group at the moment.
Yeah, and like one of them have called it they call it the Super League of Mad Scientists or something. Yeah. And there's this whole comic routine about the Mad Scientist title, which
like if you scroll back up, right?
Yep.
The very first thing is you've gone mad, right? Which is like, aren't you all mad scientists? Why would you ever say somebody's gone mad? You should all be mad by default.
Yeah, isn't that the so-called point of our secret order of mad scientists? All right, so let me. I don't want to spoil too much about what's coming next. I will say that so far in the run, the pairing of these two is, I think, the one to really focus on. These two guys here, at least so far, and they're the ones who I think are the most interesting. And by a few issues later, I think they'll start. I think you'll warm up to them because they start earning their stripes, as it were. And so I'm in terms of a villain, you're like, it's kind of like wrestling, right? You want your heels, you want them to do boo. And I think by issue 3 or 4, I was going, okay, yeah, I'm feeling it a little. I still think it's weird. This guy's shirt, the design choice for Mr. Graft being shirtless, but also wearing gloves like that. It's a little odd to me. I'm wondering if they're going to, if there's going to be something behind that. But I don't know. It's unique. I gotta give him that. Abigail's in chat. Good to see you. And I still think that there's in the end of the first issue, there is a villainous force, I think, that has not yet been introduced, that was alluded to. So I think Williamson still has somebody completely enshrouded. So
yeah, it could be.
No, that's a fair criticism to mention, though. But all right, so then we jump back to Parasite, and one thing I do think that's interesting is, and I will also again praise this, is that where the direction they take Parasite in also has a little bit of, I think it channels the coronavirus kind of scare, in terms of like Parasite being almost like an infection.
Well, we did. That's skipping out, man. We haven't got to that yet.
Sorry, so I'm just saying. I do think it's interesting how I just wanted to mention that if you're going to channel a zeitgeist, I think Williamson channels a zeitgeist here, in this issue, and I wanted to highlight that as being kind of cool. It's like, because I think that we've seen the Corona zeitgeist be, and some of that Corona zeitgeist has been very cringy, where it's like, because there's actually been, Marvel and DC have released like promotional material about get your vaccine, and it's, a lot of that's kind of cringe, and we've all seen the pictures of like all the superheroes like bowing to the doctors and nurses. That's super cringe. And so like there's that aspect of the zeitgeist. Oh, you're Dr. Fauci's a Superman, like that kind of crap. This is another way of channeling the zeitgeist that I think is interesting. And I think it's something to keep in mind, because zeitgeist is something like there's these primal cultural forces that operate behind the scenes, and if you can tap into them for your story, you're going to tap into a current, a river that people will just resonate with. And so I did want to just point out.
Yeah, what's the literal translation is Spirit of the Age.
Right, exactly, yeah. And so I know, so I'm like, okay, if you're going to channel the COVID zeitgeist, this is how I want it done. I don't want it to be cringe-inducing, like, hero worship of doctors and like government officials who don't know what they're talking about. I would rather channeling that zeitgeist be the, hey, do you remember when you were like afraid of everything, or there was all this fear? What would that look like in a fictional universe? The paranoia, the fear, that type of thing. So, yeah.
I think you might have to explain to the audience what a zeitgeist is, or at least to me.
I did. It literally translates to the spirit of the age. It's basically what is capturing like the public at large or the people of that age at any point in time, like fads, trends, any big event that happens, positive or negative, is the thing that you can't help but talk about because everybody's engaging in it.
So kind of like how in comics, there's if you think about the 90s, and I know if you take away the memes, okay, I know the memes are like, oh, Pouches and Rob Liefeld. There was a zeitgeist in 90s comics with Jim Lee and Adam Kubert and Rob Liefeld, and the zeitgeist was high energy, high action, and also a lot of edge to it, like, and in the line work, edge in the violence. It was taking things to another level, and infusing it with a type of violent energy. The zeitgeist of the 90s, violent energy, is probably a good way of even putting that into a couple of words. So that spirit, and you can't even always put it into words. That's why I call it zeitgeist, spirit.
It was everywhere. Yeah. Video games, movies, comics, it's everywhere in the 90s.
Yeah.
Surge Cola.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But that's the thing. Exactly. And people will look back on this period of 2020 through 2020.
No fear shirts.
There will be a spirit people will look back on of the 2020s, and they'll be like, there will be this. I think part of it will be the paranoia aspect.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll strangely be almost the same zeitgeist as the 1920s.
So I'm not even saying like I'm super happy about like horrible crippling fear, but there is something you can tap into, and I'm like, if you're a horror writer, now's the time, I think, to start creating some stuff, because you'll tap into subconscious things, not just conscious ones, but like the fears that people have that they sublimate in their minds.
I would suspect I don't know this for a fact. I might be wrong, but I would kind of suspect that people are so overwrought with fear at the moment that you may be able to make remarkable horror that does not find a market right now. I'm not sure.
I don't know, because
That's
the
maybe.
1920s
I might be wrong. It's
had
just
a
a feeling
lot
like
of the same spirit, right? Somehow, like, we're recycling the 20s 100 years later. But
Yeah.
right, you had like there's the Spanish flu. Depression's gonna come up, but there was a recession at that time too. There's like a lot of the same things were happening in the 1920s, and there's a lot of horror that came out in pulps that were very successful at that time. So
That's true.
it might be the age to do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The one thing that we didn't have, though, I mean, because was World War One was part of that. We don't really
it
have.
caused a lot of it. Yeah.
We don't really have the
Hey,
same.
we
death
might be getting
generation.
World War III though, so
There you
Yeah,
go.
but okay.
Let's not
talk about that though.
But back to Superman.
I don't want to think about Biden starting World War III.
Back to Superman, though. I do
Back
think
to
that
Superman.
even in these panels, I think that the zeitgeist is being channeled a bit, and I think Parasite is the Parasite and a horde of parasites, literally a horde of parasites, would be a way to channel that. And so I think that Williamson's onto something here.
Well, and it also makes it interesting too, because like with one parasite, Clark can always plus ultra his way out of a fight with Parasite, right?
Sure.
It's that force of his will that just gives it that one extra nudge to go ahead and push through it. But when you're dealing with 1,000 parasites, that's not even an option. So like the idea that Clark's got to escape and he's hurt and all that kind of stuff, I thought it made that part of the story really intriguing. So and also the thing with, I got to come back to this. I can't get over Mercy not being blonde and being a robot. Right? I mean, maybe I'm just that far out of it with current Marvel.
I think that's I think they've made her Asian now. I think that's the thing. And I think that's the thing. I think they've made her Asian.
Giant glasses.
Yeah, well, even the last time she was blonde, I think they drew it as if she wasn't naturally blonde, like she had black eyebrows or whatever. So
blondes in comics often and redheads often have black eyebrows because it's harder to make the color stand out.
Yeah, but they're kind of thicker than normal.
Yeah. Well,
so okay, this might be a case of I don't know for certain, but I know that some of these decisions, because Mercy herself is a character heavily influenced. She's a creation. She is a carryover from the animated series.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that I think they've experimented with different types of Mercy in different animated films and such. And I'm trying to remember if there was a show recently where they may have done Asian her, and I don't know if that's one of those things where they go, "Oh, we like that. We're going to do that now," kind of like with Harley Quinn. So I don't know if that's what happened there. But I like Cyborg Mercy personally. Her just being the chauffeur.
I think her as a personal assistant and all that kind of expanded role. At one point, Mercy was Amazonian. Sure.
Yeah, Colin also brings up a good point, which I've seen, especially once you start getting into the lighter hair regions. A lot of times your eyebrows are a different color. I actually knew a redhead who had blonde eyebrows, completely different. It wasn't darker, and it was lighter than the actual hair on his head.
Yeah.
Like that, odd genes. But his dad was the same way. He had brown hair with red eyebrows. It's like some weird phenotype thing with them.
Yep. Well, that happens. I mean, when I was young, I had a very, very red beard when my beard first started coming in, and now it's not.
Yeah,
it's going white.
Well, you're getting old.
That's true. Soon, I'm gonna grow the big Merlin beard by some point.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's my facial hair is dirty blonde compared to the platinum blonde hair I have.
Okay, off of hair.
So
Cyborg
Mercy. Yeah, I thought her representation in this story, other than revealing that I thought, not that was bad, but I felt it was in keeping with the first issue, and I dig the way they're playing the character. It's just one of those mental incongruities. I'm having a cognitive dissonance about Mercy. So anyway, I thought that was fun. And the Superman's going to the super university or the super corp.
Super core, yeah. They've
And
renamed
they're
it
overrun.
Core. They made it Super Core.
Yeah, they totally overrun with parasites, and then he calls out. He freezes them and escapes, and he calls out. Well, and Lex is trying to. The whole time, Lex is just talking in his ear. Listen to me, Clark. Listen to me. Together we can save the city. There's a scene a little bit later. So he's trying to convince Superman to break him out because the two of them have to work together to save the city.
Yeah.
Lex
Which
is
that
secretly
one
together.
we might want to flesh out a little bit more since for people who maybe didn't catch the last episode.
Oh yeah.
But
Okay.
Lex
good
Luthor is basically like a dog whistle to Superman at this point in his life. Even if he didn't want to, he can't help but listen on Lex because he's like trained his ears to listen on Lex, his family, and like Batman specifically. So Lex can just talk to him from anywhere, and he hears him whether he wants to or not, really.
Which I like. I like that tweak. In fact,
It makes sense.
Yeah. And it's another one of those little twists that you're like, okay, this is something that I haven't necessarily seen before explored like this, but it doesn't bother me if you're going to make this a thing.
I think they do a really good job of playing their attitudes against each other because Lex is just smug and he's talking down to Superman and he's like, you can't do it without me and you gotta not be such a goody two shoes and you gotta save the world, not save a life, and all this kind of really
Machiavellian. He's like
Machiavellian. That's exactly what I was trying to remember. Exactly. All these Machiavellian ideas with that. And at the same time, like Superman just like, oh God, I wish this guy would just be quiet. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. There's no way I'm gonna break Lex out of jail. That's dumb. So you get to see Superman as like this long-suffering guy who's like trying to decide what the best thing to do is, while he's got this like devil on his shoulder telling him, "We can save the day, just you and me, pal."
I like how Campbell is a good enough writer because one frustrating thing that some comics, including Stan Lee would actually unfortunately make this mistake, which would be in this very issue, Superman would have to break him out. It'd be like, really? Like, would Superman be so gullible to do that? And then Lex would instantly backstab him and be like, come on. Like, Stan would set it up like that. And Campbell's like, okay, these characters have no... Simmer. Yeah. These characters know each other very well. Superman is going to do everything possible before he finds himself at that point. And so like...
Okay, and here's the thing is he lets it simmer with Lex, but he introduces the new super bad guys that we need to be really afraid of. And he's just like, oh, by the way, here's tons of information about them in the second issue.
Sure.
Like, oh my gosh.
Now, so
like
that might actually be an
suspense.
editorial thing, though. If we actually think about it, that might be editorial because editors the modern editors don't think very highly of the readers, like at all, and we know this. We've even seen their discussions where they've said they don't think highly of the readers. They're probably thinking like, listen, if you don't actually fully introduce the villains by issue 2, you're going to lose the readers, which I don't think is true, but I would believe that the editors think that's true.
Yeah. So then we have Team Superman. And flashes out from the scene with Superman trying to get over, listen to the Lex whole thing, and you have Team Superman. You've got John, who's now teenage Superman. You've got Connor in the back there, who's lifting some sort of car. You got Supergirl dressed in a Team Superman. Why aren't they in their regular superhero costumes? Did something change that I wasn't aware of?
Other stuff that's going on that you're not reading.
Okay, so that's the Action Comics thing. So Action Comics right now. So this is where I'll interject, and for a couple of reasons. So the Super Family just recently, I think they dealt with a war with Warworld Mongol, and the brunette little Supergirl is I think a Kryptonian refugee from that. So the Kents are adopting her as well. And I think her and her brother, I think. Right. And so the Super Family is getting even bigger. And that's part of what's going on parallel in Action Comics. Here's what I like that Dawn of DC is doing. So Dawn of DC clearly has to be in the same continuity. And so someone's going to be like, okay, well, if Superman is, doing this adventure and he has access to like 6 other Kryptonians, what are they doing? But however, it's clear, it's very clear that either Williamson or editorial, and I'm not sure which, they've made the decision. This is Superman's book, and really only Superman's book. And so if we have to acknowledge that the rest of the Super Friends exist here, but we're going to immediately, in one page, sideline them as quickly as possible so we can get back to Superman, which is what you're here for. And it was almost like Williamson was at least winking at me, being like, okay, hold on, Twitlet.
Yeah.
I have to acknowledge these people exist, but I know you're not here for them. So just give me one page and then I will get rid of them and we'll be right back to it.
Well, that's what it
It's
feels like in
also-
general.
It's an advertisement to remind you that thing exists. You need to go read that as well and buy it.
Not
Well,
so much
so-
here.
What I was going to bring up, because you said you don't know if it's him or editorial, this sounds like a conversation between him and editorial, because editorial wants you to shove this stuff in here. And then he's like, but I want to make a Superman book, right? So this is kind of like the compromise you make. It's like, well, I'll put them on one page, right? They'll be in here. Don't worry. You'll get your thing, but on one page. No more.
And it's lampshaded the most, because not only do we have the super team, Steel now has a growing super family. So now there's more than one Steel.
Well, yeah,
So
that's
it's
actually that's been there. Natasha's been an active superhero for like a dozen years by this point. I mean, not in continuity, but that was before the New 52 even.
Okay. But like, so at this point, like it's, and this is my problem with the current run of Action Comics, because the current run of Action Comics, it's almost like Spider-Verse at this point. There's like a dozen people with the red cape. And I'm just like,
yeah,
I just want to read about Superman, bro. Why? Because it actually, it really starts deflating the drama, because I'm like, there's 12 capes, there's 12 red S's of some kind, so it really starts to just like water it down. We have I think the Chinese Superman is in the left hand corner there.
Yeah, like I wouldn't mind the kids that they adopted, the refugees, because that is something they would do if they found the refugees. But like, they don't need to be superheroes either. You could just have them. They'd have powers, but maybe they don't even want to use them. They could just go to school.
Or maybe they're not skilled enough to use them, or maybe they're still like little kids who do stupid things and they need to have somebody watch them.
But yeah, like there's things you could do to involve them without having to actually add more capes to the roster.
So that's
I gotta say, like, I really liked the on the subject of more capes. And sorry to interrupt you there, Twitless.
Oh, go ahead.
I really liked the Superman family that was existing in like the late ~90s, where it was like, because it was like Steel. And then you had the Peter David Supergirl, who was not Kryptonian, and you had Superman, and you had Superboy, right? And so you had each of them.
Or
Connell.
No, Matrix.
Okay.
Matrix.
Superboy. I thought you said Supergirl for a second.
Yeah. Supergirl, yeah. Matrix.
It was the Matrix version of Supergirl.
Yeah.
With the
it was the Matrix version. And so each of the different super people, they had their own thing and their own drama and their own book, and they had these relationships that kind of affected it, but it was still like, if you need, somebody to smash the sun, you're not going to call Steel, because that's totally outside of his wheelhouse, right? But if Superman needs somebody last minute to fix like a piece of Kryptonian equipment, and this is after Emil Hamilton was killed, and so it would be sort of like, okay, well, Steel can come in and he's smart enough to figure it out, So yeah.
And that's but you just brought up part of the problem why I'm not a huge fan of having too much of the cape characters, because it makes your Emil Hamiltons superfluous. Because I got Steel, who's also a Superman, and it's like he's the science Superman, and it's like, well, thanks. That now Emil can just basically he can just go become Ruin.
Right. No, but he had a really tragic death though. So it was one of those things that was like, it fit at a time where it fit,
Well,
so
I'm just saying that, like, that setting that aside, there's just like I said, this is part of my problem with so that's what's going on in Action Comics. But this is what makes Dawn of DC Superman special to me, because Action Comics has, like I said, it's almost becoming Superverse with the amount of capes wearing the red the Kryptonian shield. But the minute the minute that Supergirl asks for permission to basically, hey, can I become a part of Dawn of DC Superman #2? We're gearing up a rescue mission to get the rest now. We can meet you and ... no. You stay in Action Comics. This is Dawn of DC Superman #2. Didn't say Dawn of Action Comics #2. This is my book. Continue the containment. And what's funny, literally a wall
of ice.
A literal wall is erected to keep the super family. Yeah, a literal wall is erected to keep the rest of these side characters out.
I know they've done this before,
And
but it's
the
the
metal level.
perfect. Yeah. Well, it's the perfect thing against Parasite too, right? Because Parasite absorbs energy, and ice would have an endothermic reaction. So if he tried to climb, it would actually pull energy out of him through heat. And I mean, they've done that several times with Parasite. But it's like the perfect way to sideline them is by giving them like a logical thing to do.
Yeah. Yep. Why is it called? Okay, good question. Off topic. Why is it called the Dawn of DC? Hasn't DC been alive for a long time? No, DC's actually been dead since the 90s. But that's a different topic.
Anyway, on a meta level, on just a metal sort of fourth wall level, I thought this page was kind of Campbell essentially saying, okay, because like creators know that they're not just telling a story, they're also talking to their audience, even on a subliminal level. And I feel like on that subliminal level, Campbell was saying, okay, I'm addressing this, but stay with me because no, they're not invading this book. I've erected a wall and the actual characters you came here for are going to be who I am focusing on. Moving on.
Well, and it also does a great thing. One of the other great things they do on this thing is he turns the focus, right? It's like when John says, I can't find mom. Okay, you suddenly have Superman refocus himself, right? Boom. Where is Lois? I got to go do the husband thing. Ride in my white horse. It's going to be awesome, right? Yeah. So that's a moment, and he does all of that in one page. Which, man, you got to be impressed with that, right? Just from a creative perspective.
No, fair point. Like I said, I think Williamson may not be like the remarkable genius of like, wow, I'm so impressed. This guy's going to go down in the history books kind of a thing. But I think it's good to have writers who just are solid. And I'm not saying he's perfect. There's some stuff things to critique. And I think a good book does have things to critique, things to push back against. But I don't know. I like that. I think Williamson's got some chops. I also checked out his Twitter. And his Twitter was it was comics focused, I think, exclusively. So I think he tries to avoid a lot of the drama, which is another thing I respect. So I'm like, okay, I am gaining goodwill for this team. So please don't let me down.
Yeah. Don't break my heart, John.
Yeah, exactly.
So one thing to address the Superman with wife and family. I definitely do dig on that. One of my understandings is that the Dawn of DC marketing event, is also a soft reboot, and one of those elements is reestablishing that Clark and Lois have a good marriage. That had been the standard with the DC Reborn event, and then when Bendis came on, he made them not a good marriage. And my understanding is that this event was to make him a good marriage. That was one of the soft resets on that.
Yeah, I was actually kind of digging some of Superman in Rebirth before Bendis came. Like after they basically recombined the New 52 and the Prime Earth or the New Earth Superman together to the way he's supposed to be, and you had him with Lois and John. Like there was some nice little things going on there for a little while.
Yeah,
I have real problems with Bendis, which is weird because I think that when he is writing a particular type of story, maybe when he has much tighter reins put on him, I have to admit, when I was younger, I enjoyed some stuff from the ultimate line of things. partially because it was considered to be a separate reinvention. I think that once Bendis started writing mainstream stuff and he was not just playing with his experimental toys and his own experimental sandbox, I think that's where I really, really sour on him. And I think that's the big
problem is he is the reins now. Like he's the one holding them. So
and I think
like,
that's what
him.
that's
Well,
that's
and
what
like, and-
I
and
think that's where I fall on him.
I do not know. There are a couple of issues of Young Justice that Bendis wrote that I did not hate, which is why I bought that comic for like 7 months. But I hated every other issue. It's like 1 was good, 2 was crap, 3 was good, 4 was crap, 5 was okay, 6 was crap. I think it was 5 and 6 were both crap. And I was like, they were too bad in a row, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. It's done. And I don't like Bendis. I don't think his Spider-Man was that interesting. I really disliked. Not everything in it was bad, but as a whole, it was just tired rehashes of other people's stuff. I hated Powers. I do not like Bendis' stuff.
See, I know you and I differ a bit here because I like Powers, but
it's crap.
I strongly disagree. However, I think
mystery, the mystery in Powers is good. Everything else about it is terrible.
I think we can both agree that regardless of what we personally think about Powers, it is much easier to accept Bendis's writing when he's playing with either his own toys in his own sandbox, or he is playing in a like, we've created a sandbox for you called the Ultimate Comics. and because I think there's a big difference, because when I'm reading his like just like regular in continuity mainstream stuff, I read something of his and it was so bad that it made me almost want to stop reading comics. Like I had this moment.
I remember that. I think you had a meltdown on the show.
I had to go read something immediately after Bendis's horrible book because I had to reignite the fire that had been doused. Like that's how bad it was. And so I'm like, but there's stuff of his that I've read, like, I actually kind of enjoyed some of the Ultimate Spider-Man I read. And it's very much its own thing. And but I've read, I don't know, like I said, so, but the I think, and we got to move on, but
yeah. Because we're here to talk about Bendis.
I know, but I'm wondering if he's become a victim of his own, of his own either
success. Yes.
Because I think the things we see from him nowadays, I think, are so much worse than what I think he did before.
No, I think you're right. I think that's one of the reasons. Like, I find the same problems with Powers that we discussed with Blankets. I think Powers is has the exact same types of foibles as Blankets. It's self-congratulatory. It's entirely too fond of itself.
That may be.
And I've only read the first trade, so I mean maybe it gets better, but like it could easily have been a third shorter and had the same story in it. And nothing. There was nothing on the cutting room floor of that. Not a single.
Who started us on Bendis?
We're talking about the super kids. And the marriage between Lois and Clark. So Clark races to the Daily Planet to try to find Lois, and who does he find but this rootin' tootin' cowboy shooting ghost lady?
Marilyn Moonlight.
Marilyn Moonstruck? Moonlight. Who shoots him with a gun, and he does dodging bullets. That's a really fun page. And then she says, "You were gone." And so Metropolis had to find its own heroes. Yeehaw. And then she giddies up on out of there. And that's basically the introduction of Marilyn Moonlight. And,
not a lot of... Okay, I have to say it's definitely her introduction, and this is why I pulled up this right here. I would say it's much more style over substance.
Yes.
But the style it brings. I look at that panel, that panel transition. Oh my gosh, that's a panel transition. Oh my gosh.
The light horse, the whole thing. I love her look. I love the style. I want to know more about this character.
Well, do you see how she's bleeding into, because she kind of has this sort of magical liquidity to her, like morphing, and the fact she's morphing between Campbell. This one panel transition, I cannot say enough about how I love this.
To answer Colin's question, why she has a massive head on the cover, it's the hat. It's the hat brim. You can actually see the very edge of the crown on the cover, but you don't know what it is, and it's made so big on the cover because so it can turn the whole full moon into a crescent. But you don't recognize it's a hat until you've read it in the book, and you're like, oh, she's wearing a cowboy hat. Now I see on the cover there's a little grace of the edge of the crown. But yeah,
and which I like. Because it's a better way of making the crescent shape that people like to draw, because the crescent moon people draw is not how the moon looks.
Yeah, not usually.
So one thing I want to point out is that a couple other things regarding the character being style is the fact that modern Cartoonicus might get a kick out of this. Marilyn Moonlight, when you look at the panel on the right, I believe this is a character that could only exist in with modern digital coloring. The way that she is essentially glowing, I'm not saying the character could technically exist without this, but the fact that you have modern rendering is what allows the particular style of Marilyn Moonlight to really shine here. And I think that's an interesting thing to point out. Yeah. Right. I think that's an interesting thing to point out. So like we have the modern, this is a superhero born of modern rendering and in terms of style. So I think that's an interesting thing to point out.
Well, I can tell you, if this had been made in like even up to the 90s, everything glowing here would have simply been represented by white and yellow.
Maybe blue.
Everything, like half the stuff in the panel
like
would just
be
cast
shadow or something like that.
Yeah, and there probably would have also been like more like lines, like action lines radiating.
Exactly right. There'd be black lines, and then those black lines would simply separate everything into fields of white and yellow.
And then use a dark background color to make it seem even brighter.
But I don't think so. I think you'd just have a white background, and that's
blue.
They would
use blue.
They would use
there was. I mean, like honestly,
characters.
Go check out some '70s stuff that has like Cloak and Dagger in it, and that's what you'd see. Is that kind of play with light and black?
Gentleman Ghost, like they had ghost characters. Yeah. But this particular style, the way that she's
Cloak and Dagger. That's the stuff. Sure. That's the go read Cloak and Dagger.
Or like if you read any of the old Elric comics, anytime that he actually uses Stormbringer and it like glows white with the thunder around it, they would do stuff like that.
Yep.
Anyway,
I've not seen it, but I know what you're talking
about. Marilyn Moonlight, creature born of modern rendering, and I think if you are going to lean into some of those things, that's again another thing. Some people will critique modern rendering, but if you're going to use modern rendering, lean into the strengths. Let it, if it's good, if you can have the glow, have a character who can make special use of those tools to pop off the page like that.
Right.
So I like to see some of those elements as well.
You know who would appreciate this last 5 minutes have been Matt Krotz.
Yeah.
If you're out there, Matt.
I tried to get him to read this. I'm still hoping to sell him on it.
Yeah. Send him the shot from this page and see if he.
I did.
I really like
this exact panel.
How the kind of like wrappings from both panels kind of connect to each other.
I was just like this. I love this so much because I'm a big structure guy. So the fact that they're playing with structure, panel transition, while also reinforcing that she's basically almost in two places at once. You can barely see where she's in one, where one ends and the other begins, and it's kind of magical, mystical. I'm like that all of that sells well.
And remember, and so this thing is we've got to remember this whole up to this episode of this part of the episode issue. Clark he's had a bunch of his energy, his solar light sucked out by the parasite beasts, and he's running on like 40% power, or whatever. And so he in the basement of the Daily Planet, or the lobby of the Daily Planet, runs into this moon lady, and she shoots at him with her magic ghost guns, and then she zips off into the wilderness, or into the sunset or whatever, basically saying, well, you weren't here, so we did it for ourselves. Pew pew. Then he realizes on the next page, after she's trotted away on her ghost moonlight horse, that suddenly he's back to full strength. Like, wait a second, I feel great. How did that happen?
So yeah, the moonlight part here, because it's this issue happens at nighttime, and so Superman would have a more difficult time recharging. But moonlight, she's using her moonlight power in some way. It recharges him. Which is nice.
The light of the sun.
Sunlight.
Yeah. Moonlight is sun.
Yeah, that's fair. But well, he says moonlight anyway. Anyway, so do we want to do the big spoil image?
Oh, I was going to also say, I was getting some mad, like, mid-run Jonah Hex vibes when she showed up, too.
Yeah.
Well, she's
she's
got a connection to that.
Flashback to the Old West, so who knows where maybe they're going to pull some Jonah Hex in. Who knows?
Wouldn't surprise me. Would not surprise me. Yeah.
Anyway. But no, I wonder if we shouldn't leave this last. There's one more story beat in the thing, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't leave it for next month. What do you guys think?
Yeah, let's leave it. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I think that's fair. So, tune in next month, and we'll spoil this issue. To talk about
there you go.
Or you could go and read it in the meantime.
Yeah, that's true. You can read it in the meantime. It's available at your local comic shop. You can get it from Amazon. Wherever.
But things get more intense, I guess.
Oh yes, things go intense because remember, Clark went to the Daily Planet for a reason that we will talk about next month. Yeah. So that's the show next week.
Before we wrap up, I'm just like thoughts from the panel. What did you think of this issue compared to issue 1? That kind of sum up kind of thing.
I really liked it. This honestly, like this thing, I don't know what it is, man. This thing had me hooked. I am excited to see where it goes from here. I know I was a little I wasn't as excited after reading the first issue as I think you were there, Twitless. But
this is the first one I read. I read issue 2 before issue 1, so this is the one this is the one that kind of sold me on the series. Yeah.
Well, yeah. This is a solid one, man. And like the way they play it on there and everything else. And I like that, one of the things, my favorite things about this thing is that you've just got that Lex that's talking to Clark, just like in his ear, just bugging him. And Clark is just like, fie on you, villain. I've got hero things to do.
I think it's actually the next one that sold me on this series. Not that the first two didn't. But like Twitless, who came in on 2 and then went back and read 1 and then tried to get us to read it with him, I just read them all back to back. So it was like by the time I got 2-3, I think is where I was sold on it. But I enjoyed this one too. I thought it was pretty good. Like I said earlier, I'm not a fan of Parasite typically. I liked the twist and how Parasite was handled in here because it was more of just the gimmick that Parasite typically is as a character.
And in the secret story bit, the thing I love, I'm just going to say that about this here, and you guys can guess that you want there, but they keep playing with where they're going, right? Yeah. It's not just like a static idea. It's like moving on. And so it makes it further intriguing.
It builds on it. They're building on it. Yeah.
Yep.
Colin brings up a good point. I do want to mention, because this is kind of why I wanted to read this in the first place. He said it's weird for me to see people enjoy modern comics. And part of what I wanted to do.
Enjoy modern comics.
This is why I wanted to do this, because I wanted to find something that I could enjoy on some level, so I could have a reason to go to the comic book store. But B, because I didn't want to, and this is important because I do teach, and I want to be able to what are the kids? I want to have some connection even if it's like I only read this one or something, but I can still say I have some current knowledge, and I'm not just saying, oh, I stopped reading comics in the 90s and that's it. So
Well, I
or
don't
at
think
least
you have to worry about what
mainstream
are the
stuff,
kids
so.
reading, because looking at sales, I don't think the kids are actually reading these stuff.
Do kids read?
Well, and you got to also realize that like you can't really look at sales, like because they're not on the newsstand. There's no like official way to record sales.
Oh, it's to store.
Okay.
We don't know what the stores are actually selling.
Yeah, we don't know what the stores are actually selling.
Still though, I wanted to find something current, and part of it was because so much of comics.
Don't tell me what to do, Fizchozo.
So much of comics is this. It's like I found this book on the newsstand or in my comic book shop. Let's read it together and talk about it. And it's coming out next month, so it's not just something that's like been out historically. Like that experience has been so key to when comics have been successful. And I wanted to tap into just even a portion of that. And this book is not perfect, but I'll say that even when I've been like, oh, I don't like this about it or whatever, I've never felt like Williamson and Campbell were trying to insult me. I've always felt like they were trying to tell the best Superman story that is consistent with who they see Superman to be, which is fairly consistent with who he is as an aspirational character. And I'm like, you know what? I for that one book, all right, I will. I'm enjoying it so far. So those are my thoughts as an individual issue. I think that the Parasite thing is the strongest aspect of the story.
Yes.
I think it works pretty darn well. Marilyn Moonlight, less so. I think her introduction is definitely style over substance, but that doesn't mean substance can't come later. And
that's why I can't make a decision on her yet. Like I just don't know.
Teresa's point, Williamson's doing a way better job of keeping Marilyn Moonlight under the hat than the villains. The villains are just like, here they are. So I
like the everything we've seen of Marilyn Moonlight. I want to see more. I'm intrigued by new characters in these legacy companies. Not so much that you shouldn't seek out. I was going to make a pitch for my own comics here, but man, I got a sad story about that in a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Mildly sad. It's not massively sad. We're figuring it out. Anyway, moving on. We'll talk about that in the pitch section. But I wish we would have had at least one more issue where we don't know anything about the villains, right? Where they're super mysterious, where we get to see them do some really evil stuff. I mean, that's the thing. I wanted to care that they're villains. Like I wanted some reason to think that like Lex has a reason to be scared of these people, right?
You will. It's coming. You
I
will.
know, but it's just
you will.
The pacing wise, man. I just it's like hey.
Yeah, I would rather not see them until they're ready to tell me why they're afraid. I don't really need to know too much about them before that, other than like background clues or like Lex freaking out. It's like these two things shouldn't be so far apart from each other, like in different issues.
Right, and it's just one of those things where it's just like if we have, and like all the other side characters that are like the other four, like mad scientists that are like we're not keen on being called mad scientists. Like, are they a major part of the next story coming up? I don't know. I wouldn't think so. It seems like a throwaway line
like
you've invented. What? I'm sorry.
they read like punks.
Yeah, just like and I know that scene in Dark Knight was kind of cool because you had the Joker show up and he killed a dude with a pencil, and like that seemed kind of cool. And they're just doing that scene, but like there's no reason to care. Like every one of the characters in that scene in Dark Knight, you met a little bit through the course of the movie, and I don't even like that as a movie, right? But that scene worked really well, and I don't think it worked well here. And that's my one complaint about it. I liked everything else.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
I'm still stoked to read the third issue because I really did like this issue. For some reason, I really hated that scene, but it didn't squelch me on the rest of it.
Well, I think I like the next one because of the 4 that I read, I thought the third was my favorite so far. So
I'm also still liking that Williamson is writing the characters in ways that do not grate on me. So like I was actually kind of endeared a bit to Livewire. I don't think I've ever felt endeared to Livewire before. But like the way he writes her consistently, I'm like, she's not so bad.
Which she was in the last one for those who didn't watch the last episode that we did with this.
Yeah. She makes an appearance in this one too. And but
I didn't make it that far, I think, right?
I'm used to certain characters being written so annoying. And no one here, including Marilyn Moonlight, who could also have been written as "I'm just here to upstage you because I am the OC of Williamson," and she doesn't. She kind of
actually happens to check boxes too. It's great that she didn't upstage him, despite the fact that she checks all the modern boxes.
Right? Yeah. So,
well, I mean, but that's what the thing is, and like her, she didn't upstage him, but she's also like an important part of the next phase of the story. Right, or like the fact that she allowed him to be repowered, the place to fit that in there. So it has a possibility to mean something to the story in a way that doesn't take anything away from Superman, but still makes her vital to the way that may play out.
I also agree with Colin. That is Marilyn Moonlight is a nice name. Like he actually came up with a good name.
Yeah.
Good point. That's fair. That's a good point.
So, but yeah. Yeah, that's it. So next week's show is going to be, we are talking, I know Hutch is going to be here. I know Captain Cummings is going to be here. I think Englentine is still planning on it if he can make it work. And we are talking about comic books on the newsstand and the direct market. And did the direct market ruin the American comic book industry?
Short answer, yes.
Okay.
I have my
we don't have to have
opinions.
a stream.
Yeah, and we'll talk about all that.
The answer is going to be more nuanced than people think.
I think so. That's because it's even it's actually much more nuanced because we'll get into that next week. Lots of bullet points. Maybe we'll even have some slides. Who knows what the next week holds? I'm going to be excited to talk it over with some other Gen Xers and the guys here on the panel. So that'll be fun. And then week after, I know what I want to do, but we got to talk to the whole crew and see if we can get an agreement on that one. So anyhow, so our personal pitch stuff. With what word? Twitless, are you still here? Or did he drop off? Oh,
your screen just went gray for a second. That must be StreamYard.
Yeah, when you stopped sharing it, like hiccuped or something, and you were just gray. So
weird.
Anyway,
yep. Check out Omega Girl. Check out Super School. That's all I got.
So this is the time of the show I normally would send you to idealcomics.net to check out our series of nerd articles and backdrop for our universe, and a link to all of our various places on the web where you can read our comics for Ideal Comics, but you can't because we had some sort of kerfuffle with our internet hosting and the site is down, and we're got to figure out if we're going to figure out the site and if we can get the thing back or what we're going to do with it all. So for now, you can look us up on Global Comics. We got a ton of comics there. You can follow us on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter. And we should be having updates with whatever we decide to do by next week. So, the Metal is shared our link to our Global Comics. And we've got updated the manga edition of Forces of Good and Evil. We're putting up that as we adapt the first a year plus of stories into a manga-sized edition that we hope to get printed. I'm hoping to get those ready for the High Plains Mini-Con, September 24th, here in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. You're all invited. It's free. Getting here is not free, but being here is. Well, I mean, the con doesn't cost anything. That's what I mean. There are hotels and food and stuff, should you want to come.
I like stuff.
Stuff is good. But yeah, that's what I got to talk about. And oh, sweet. We have thank you, Colin. I also like Global Comics a lot. We also
Same.
have stuff for sale on Gumroad. Metal has been sharing his link to his site, X Dynamos Chaos, and you've got the novel version of X Dynamos Chaos is for sale right now, right?
Oh yeah. That's been for sale. Like
Oh, okay.
anybody could have picked that up since like I think 2018 might have when I put that live.
Okay.
Or when,
For some reason, I had in my
maybe
head
it was
that was
2020.
new.
I don't know. No. It's been around for a few years. It might have been 2020. But you could, if you go to the store section on the site or just put /store at the end of that link, you can find that. You can find links to the print version of any of the finished comics, which should be up to the 5th chapter of the webcomic is up. I'm still waiting on the Realms and Relics chapter to be available, but it's got all of them. It's got the hyperlink to the place you can get them at. Next to it, I put the price so you can tell what it is before clicking on it if you're even interested, and you can find any of that stuff. And also, my commissions are open. I got a huge 11 by 14 multi-medium sketchbook that I can use. I've got a scanner for it too if people are interested in either pencil study, ink, or even full color commissions. You can contact me. Not telling you what the price are, because that's the easiest way to get undercut. You tell me what you want, and I will tell you how much it's worth.
That's true. Does good work too.
So
The
that's pretty much
the eventual cover for the manga-sized Force of Good and Evil #1 was done by my man Metal there.
Yeah.
So yeah, which you can actually check that cover out on Global Comics.
I was actually because I brought it up jokingly, I think on Mike's channel. Actually,
Mike's
was a little disappointed that you colored it yourself, because or at least that I didn't give you the uncompressed TIFF, because then you could have just locked the layer that the tones were on, the screen tones, and turned them into half tones, which would have made the coloring a lot easier and pop more. Yeah.
Yeah, that probably would have been fine, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we can go back and
we
do
could.
it again.
I still have it, I think. I think I still
Yeah,
have the master file.
we'll talk off air. Because when it comes to printing, I think that may make a difference. Cartoonicus, I was so anxious to talk about my website being down, I totally skipped over you.
I'm just here to be the peanut butter gallery.
Okay. Well, his link tree is available on his thing there, so you can follow him on the link tree. So cool. Well, I think that's going to be shows a little shorter than our typical shows tonight, but we're going to go ahead and wrap that up because I'm going to go have some food.
Short and sweet is good. I like
Short and sweet is good. We have said all the things there are to say, and next week, man, it's a topic I have been looking forward to for years. I was waiting for the right time, and I believe this is it. So next week, check it out, and then the week after,
Cartoonist gets a link in there for him.
Oh yeah, awesome. Thank you, Metal. So you guys that are out there watching live, you can click on that and check out all of Cartoonicus's animations and comics and fun things.
You can't click on it, actually. You'd have to copy and paste, it looks like.
No, I did for you. I typed it.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm looking at it on StreamYard. It's probably different on.
No, yeah, not on StreamYard.
On YouTube, you can click on it. Yeah. It's
on YouTube you can click on it because because Metal is an admin. He's got the wrench.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we'll catch you guys all out next time around, and until next time, get out there and read some comics. Good night.